Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Story English Zone. This is your time to relax and listen. I am so happy you are here. Today, we begin a very special journey. This is the story of one man, a man who started with nothing. No home, no family, no food, no power. And yet, this one man changed the entire world. He built the largest land empire in all of human history. His name was Temujin, but the world would come to know him by another name, a name that still carries weight, still carries fear, and still carries wonder even today. That name was Genghis Khan. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe slowly, and let us travel back together more than 800 years to the cold, open grasslands of Mongolia. Some people claim that he and the empire he created caused the deaths of 40 million people. But is that number really true? And how did one man become powerful enough to terrify so much of the world? To understand the conqueror, we must first meet the hungry boy who almost disappeared on the Mongolian steppe. Before he was called Genghis Khan, his name was Temujin. He was probably born around the year 1162, although historians are not certain of the exact date. He grew up on the wide grasslands of Mongolia, a beautiful but dangerous world of open skies, freezing winters, and constant tribal conflict. There were no cities around him, and no golden palace waiting for him. Families lived in round tents and moved with their animals in search of water and fresh grass. Horses were essential for travel, hunting, trade, and war. Life on the steppe depended on family and tribe. Without their protection, a person could lose everything. Temujin learned this lesson while he was still a child. His father, Yasuge, was a tribal leader. But while returning from a journey, he was reportedly poisoned by a group of Tatars, an enemy people. Soon afterward, he died. Temujin was still very young. After Yasuge's death, his followers abandoned the family. They did not want to be led by a child, and they did not want to support his mother and her children. Temujin's mother, Hoilan, was suddenly alone. She had to keep her children alive without livestock, powerful relatives, or tribal protection. The family searched for wild plants and roots. They caught fish and hunted small animals. Every meal became a victory, and every winter became a test. Temujin did not grow up believing that the world was fair. He learned that loyalty could disappear as soon as a leader became weak. Before he learned how to conquer a kingdom, he first had to learn how to survive one more night. But hunger did not unite the family completely. Temujin and his younger brother once fought with their older half-brother Begter over food and authority. The conflict became violent, and Temujin and his brother killed Begter. It was a dark act committed while Temujin was still young. It showed that, even inside his own family, he was prepared to use violence to protect his position. The steppe was already teaching him a dangerous lesson. Power often belonged to the person willing to take it. His enemies also understood that Temujin could become a threat. Members of a rival group captured him and held him as a prisoner. According to the traditional story, he escaped with help from a man who chose not to betray him. Temujin never forgot such acts of loyalty. As he grew older, he married Berte, the young woman his father had chosen for him years earlier. She would become his most important wife and a central figure in his family. But soon after their marriage, Berte was kidnapped by Merkit raiders. Temujin did not yet command a great army, so he asked other leaders for help. One was Togrul, an old ally of his father. The other was Jamuka, Temujin's childhood friend and sworn brother. Together, they attacked the Merkit and rescued Berte. The victory changed Temujin's life. Warriors began to notice him. He was no longer simply the abandoned son of a dead leader. He was becoming a man who could build alliances, inspire followers, and defeat his enemies. Yet his friendship with Jamuka would not last. Jamuka believed in the traditional order of the steppe, where noble birth decided a man's position. Temujin began offering power to people based more on ability and loyalty. A poor warrior who fought bravely could rise under Temujin. A former enemy could join him. A talented man from a weak family could receive responsibility. This attracted people who had little opportunity under the old system. But Temujin's new order demanded complete obedience. He organized warriors into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. He placed men from different tribes together, weakening their old loyalties and connecting them directly to him. He rewarded discipline, courage, and useful skills. He also punished desertion, betrayal, and disobedience with great severity. This system gave his followers a place in something larger than their own tribe. It also helped transform Mongol society into an extremely effective machine for war. Temujin offered his followers opportunity and protection. But those who refused his authority often faced destruction. The struggle between Temujin and Jamuka eventually became a war for control of the steppe. Old friends became bitter enemies. Tribes chose sides, alliances changed, and thousands of warriors fought for their vision of Mongolia's future. Temujin suffered defeats, but he continued to return. He learned from his failures, gathered new followers, and defeated one rival after another. Jamuka was eventually betrayed by some of his own men and delivered to Temujin. Instead of rewarding them, Temujin ordered the traitors punished. Even though Jamuka was his enemy, Temujin hated men who betrayed their leader. For him, loyalty was not simply a virtue. It was the foundation of survival. By 1206, Temujin had defeated or absorbed the most important rival groups. At a great meeting of Mongol leaders known as a Kurultai, he received a new title, Genghis Khan. The abandoned boy had become the supreme ruler of the united Mongols. He now commanded one of the fastest and most disciplined armies in the world. His warriors could travel enormous distances, communicate across the battlefield, and attack from directions their enemies did not expect. But uniting the steppe was only the beginning. Beyond Mongolia stood wealthy kingdoms filled with farmland, treasure, and great cities. Their rulers trusted their large armies and high walls. They believed that horsemen from the grasslands could never destroy them. Genghis Khan was about to prove them wrong. The rulers beyond Mongolia believed their walls would protect them. They were wrong. Genghis Khan first turned toward Western Xia, a kingdom northwest of China. His horsemen were excellent in open battle, but attacking a fortified city was different. Horses could not climb walls. Arrows could not easily break heavy gates. At first, the Mongols had limited experience in siege warfare. But they had one ability that made them especially dangerous. They learned quickly. They captured engineers and craftsmen from the peoples they defeated. These experts taught them how to build ladders, siege machines, and weapons that could throw heavy stones. Instead of destroying every useful enemy, Genghis Khan often forced skilled people to serve his empire. The Mongols did not win simply because they were brutal. They became terrifying because they learned faster than their enemies. After forcing Western Xia to submit, Genghis Khan attacked the Jin dynasty, which controlled much of northern China. The Jin had great cities, large armies, and enormous wealth. They saw the Mongols as poor people from the grasslands, but the Mongols were not fighting like an ordinary army. Before an attack, scouts studied the land, roads, rivers, and enemy defenses. Mongol units could separate, travel in different directions, and come together again at the right moment. Sometimes they pretended to retreat. When enemy soldiers chased them, the Mongols suddenly turned and attacked. They cut off food supplies, surrounded cities, and used prisoners or captured soldiers to support their campaigns. In 1215, Mongol forces captured Zhongdu, near modern Beijing. The city was looted and badly damaged. Smoke rose above homes and palaces. Wealth that had taken generations to build disappeared in a short time. As the Mongols continued to win, stories of their violence traveled ahead of them. Genghis Khan understood. that fear could be as powerful as an army. A city that surrendered early sometimes received better treatment. Its people might have to pay taxes, provide food, or accept Mongol rule. But many could remain alive. Soldiers might be added to the Mongol army, while craftsmen, engineers, and officials were often separated and sent elsewhere. But a city that resisted faced a much darker future. If its defenders killed Mongol soldiers or forced the siege to continue, the city could be looted and destroyed. Large numbers of soldiers and civilians might be killed. Survivors could be enslaved or moved far from their homes. Some were reportedly sent toward other cities, where they became living warnings of what resistance could bring. This reputation allowed Genghis Khan to win battles before they began. When people heard that a nearby city had been destroyed, they sometimes opened their gates without fighting. For Genghis Khan, terror could save the lives of his own soldiers. For the families behind the walls, it could mean the end of their world. But his most destructive campaign began not with an invasion, but with trade. West of the Mongol lands stood the Khwarazmian Empire. It controlled wealthy cities along the Silk Road across Central Asia and Persia. At first, Genghis Khan appears to have wanted peaceful trade with its ruler, Shah Muhammad. He sent a large caravan into Khwarazm territory. When the caravan reached Otrar, the local governor accused its members of being spies. The merchants were arrested, their goods were taken, and most or all of them were killed. Genghis Khan did not immediately send an army. Instead, he sent envoys to Shah Muhammad. He demanded that the governor of Otrar be handed over for punishment. The Shah refused. One envoy was killed, while the others were humiliated and sent back. To Genghis Khan, envoys were protected representatives. Killing one was not only an insult, it was a direct attack on his authority. A trade dispute was about to become one of the most destructive wars of the medieval world. In 1219, the Mongol invasion began. The Shah believed that distance, deserts, armies, and city walls would protect his empire. Instead of gathering all his forces for one great battle, he placed soldiers inside different cities. Genghis Khan divided his own army into several forces. While some attacked expected targets, he led other troops through the Kizilkum Desert, across land the defenders believed a large army could not cross. Then the Mongols appeared behind the Khwarazm defensive lines. Bukhara fell. Its defenders were defeated, and much of the city was looted and burned. The Mongols then moved toward Samarkand, one of the richest and most important cities in Central Asia. It had high walls and a large defensive force, but it also fell with shocking speed. Shah Muhammad fled west as the empire around him collapsed. Mongol generals followed him across enormous distances. He eventually died far from his capital, unable to rebuild the power he had lost. For the people of Khwarazm, the destruction was not only visible on a map. Markets became silent. Homes were robbed or burned. Families were separated. Craftsmen were taken away to work for new masters. Farmers lost their animals, fields, and water systems. Survivors left cities where their families had lived for generations. At places such as Merv, Nishapur, Urgench, and Bamiyan, historical accounts describe terrible massacres. Some old writers claimed that hundreds of thousands, or even more than 1 million people were killed in a single city. These numbers should not be accepted as exact facts. Medieval writers sometimes exaggerated, and several estimates may have been larger than the city's real populations. But uncertain numbers do not mean the massacres were imaginary. Many communities were destroyed, and civilians died on a massive scale. Even surrender did not always guarantee safety. The fate of a city could depend on when it surrendered, how long it had resisted, and whether someone important to the Mongols had been killed. Genghis Khan had created a system in which loyalty could be rewarded, but one ruler's resistance could bring punishment upon an entire population. His armies moved across Central Asia, Persia, and the Caucasus. His generals Jebei and Subutai traveled even farther west, defeating new enemies and gathering information about distant lands. The abandoned boy from the steppe now controlled an empire of grasslands, farms, trade routes, and ruined cities. Yet one kingdom had not been completely defeated. Western Xia had resisted Mongol demands and failed to give Genghis Khan the support he expected. He decided to return and punish it. He had defeated armies, destroyed dynasties, and made cities surrender at the sound of his name. But during this final campaign, the conqueror who seemed impossible to stop would suddenly disappear from history. In 1226, Genghis Khan began his final campaign against Western Xia. He was now an older man, but his desire for control had not weakened. Western Xia had resisted his demands, and Genghis Khan was determined to destroy its power completely. During the campaign, however, something happened to him. Some stories say that he fell from his horse. Others suggest that he was wounded in battle or became seriously ill. Many more dramatic legends appeared long after his death, but there is no strong evidence that proves any one of them. What we know is that Genghis Khan died in August 1227. According to tradition, his death was kept secret while the military campaign continued. Western Xia was finally destroyed as an independent kingdom. The location of Genghis Khan's grave also remains unknown. He may have been buried somewhere in Mongolia, but no burial place has ever been confirmed. The man who made countless cities fear his name left behind no tomb that the world can identify with certainty. Genghis Khan was dead, but the killing carried out in the name of his empire was far from over. Before his death, Genghis Khan had prepared for the future. He chose his son Ögedei to become the next great Khan. His sons and grandsons then continued expanding the empire he had created. Mongol armies conquered more territory in China. They moved into Russia and Eastern Europe. In 1258, they captured Baghdad and destroyed the Abbasid Caliphate. In 1279, they completed the conquest of the Southern Song dynasty. All these events happened after Genghis Khan had died. This difference is important. There were the personal campaigns that Genghis Khan led or ordered before 1227. Then there were the wider Mongol conquests carried out by his children, grandchildren, and later rulers. Popular stories often place all these deaths under the name of Genghis Khan. But one man could not personally lead wars that happened decades after his death. Still, he cannot be separated completely from them. Genghis Khan created the army, the political system, and the idea of unlimited expansion that allowed later Mongol rulers to continue conquering new lands. So, how many people did Genghis Khan kill? The honest answer is that no one knows. One number appears again and again: 40 million. Some estimates for the wider Mongol conquests range from around 20 million to 60 million deaths. 40 million is often repeated because it is shocking and easy to remember, but it is not a confirmed body count. Historians do not have a complete list of victims. They must study old chronicles, damaged records, and population reports from before and after the wars. These sources are difficult to use. Medieval writers sometimes claimed that hundreds of thousands of people died in a single city. In some cases, their numbers may have been larger than the city's entire population. Population records also disappeared during the invasions. But a person missing from a tax record was not always dead. Some people escaped. Others were captured, enslaved, or moved to distant regions. Many villages stopped paying taxes because local governments had collapsed. War also destroyed farms, animals, and irrigation systems. This caused hunger long after the soldiers had left. Disease killed more people in weakened communities. It is almost impossible to separate those killed in battle from those murdered in massacres, or those who later died from starvation and disease. It is even harder to decide which deaths should be blamed directly on one ruler. Therefore, 40 million should not be presented as the exact number of people personally killed or directly ordered to be killed by Genghis Khan. It is a disputed estimate, usually connected to the much wider Mongol conquests. However, this uncertainty should not be used to make the destruction seem less serious. Genghis Khan deliberately used collective punishment. Armies under his command killed civilians, destroyed cities, and forced entire populations from their homes. He may not have killed millions with his own hands, but he held political and military responsibility for the campaigns he ordered. Yet his legacy is more complicated than destruction alone. He united the Mongol tribes and created a powerful new state. He gave important positions to people based on loyalty and ability, not only noble birth. He protected envoys, employed talented people from many cultures, and generally allowed different religions to exist within his empire. The empire also helped trade, information, technology, and ideas move across enormous distances. Roads and communication networks connected parts of Asia and Europe more closely than before, but this connection came at a terrible price. Trade routes became safer only after many communities had been defeated. Religious differences could be accepted, but political resistance often could not. A person who served the empire might receive opportunity, while a city that resisted could face destruction. Genghis Khan connected worlds, but he often connected them through conquest, fear, and blood. This is why people remember him in very different ways. For many Mongolians, he is the leader who united their ancestors and created a great nation. His image represents strength, independence, and national identity. But in parts of Central Asia, Persia, and northern China, his name remains connected with invasion and death. Both memories can exist at the same time. Genghis Khan was not simply a wild monster without intelligence. His military organization, leadership, and ability to learn were extraordinary. But he was also not an innocent genius who has been unfairly misunderstood. He chose to use terror and violence on a massive scale. Can we admire the intelligence that built an empire without ignoring the lives destroyed to create it? Nearly 800 years later, that question still has no easy answer. Genghis Khan unified the steppe, but he did it through years of war. He created a disciplined army, but he also transformed Mongol society into a machine for conquest. He rewarded skill, but demanded complete loyalty. He protected trade, but first used war to control the routes on which that trade moved. And although his empire became the largest connected land empire in history, millions of ordinary people paid the price for its growth. Temujin's story may feel very far from your own life. You may never lead an army or build an empire, but perhaps you understand the boy he once was. Maybe right now, you feel that you have nothing in your hands. No money, no powerful family, no special connections, no clear direction for your future. Perhaps other people are moving forward while you feel left behind. You may look at your life and wonder, how can I begin when I have so little? Temujin began as an abandoned child on the steppe. He had no palace, no great army, and no promise that his life would become better. He experienced hunger, loss, fear, and betrayal, but he kept learning. He learned how people behaved in difficult times. He learned whom he could trust. He learned from defeat, changed his methods, and slowly built relationships with others. This does not mean that we should follow the violent path he later chose. His life shows us both the power of growth and the danger of using that power without compassion. Your beginning does not have to decide your ending. When you have nothing in your hands, you can still begin with what is inside you. Your willingness to learn, your courage to try again, and your decision not to give up on yourself. You do not need to change your whole life today. Learn one new word. Understand one new sentence. Spend 10 minutes building a skill that your future may need. These small actions may not look powerful now, but repeated every day, they can slowly open doors that once seemed impossible to reach. Perhaps nobody sees your effort yet. Perhaps nobody believes in the dream you carry. Continue anyway. A difficult beginning does not mean that you are weak. Sometimes it means you are learning how to stand without the support that other people were given. But Genghis Khan's life also offers an important warning. Success alone does not make a life great. As you become stronger, do not forget how it felt to be powerless. As you gain opportunities, do not destroy the opportunities of others. Let your pain teach you compassion, not cruelty. Let your strength protect people, not frighten them. Real power is not only the ability to rise, it is the ability to rise without losing your humanity. So if you feel that you have nothing today, remember this: you are not finished. You may simply be standing at the beginning of a story that has not yet revealed what you can become. Take one small step, then take another. Your future may be built quietly, one word, one skill, and one brave decision at a time. How should history remember Genghis Khan? As the brilliant leader who united the Mongols, the ruthless conqueror whose armies destroyed entire cities, or both? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are learning English to create a better future even when you are starting with very little, subscribe to Story English Zone. Keep learning. Keep moving forward. Your story is still being written.